And I'd like to welcome the first guest who's here in the studio. Hi, Robert. This is Robert Facer.
How you doing, Coral?
I'm doing great. Glad that you're here again. We had Robert last week, and there was not enough time to go through all his quests that I wanted to ask him about the latest thing that's gone on with his ticket. Robert is a person who you wanted to tell where you came from and when. First, I could tell the audience he didn't come through an ordinary means of transportation. So, how did you get here, Robert?
Well, you'd have to go quite a ways back, but 20 years ago, I started paddling a kayak out of Valdez, Alaska, and it took me until 2008 to make it to Santa Cruz.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was it was a long trip. I'd go about 250 miles a year, and I made a slight side journey up the Columbia River for 3 years, so it's put an extra 1,000 miles on my journey. But I've gone quite a ways in a kayak.
Is it the same kayak that you started with 20 years ago?
No, I started with a rotiform plastic white water boat, and that got me the first 128 miles. And then the waters I was getting into were so severe that I bought a 17-foot Sita Viking. Sita is a company that makes or was manufacturing kayaks out of Chula Vista, California, but they had a kayak shop in Cordova, and I bought that boat, and it took me 900 miles in a period of actually 3 years down to Ketchikan, where I got another boat, and that made it in another, gosh darn, let me think, how long? It took another 4 years, I guess, but I made it down to the Columbia River, and there I lost that boat in the surf and built one out of quarter-inch marine plywood and took it up the Columbia River to as far as the Canadian border. I went up to Okanagan and then came back down, and someone stole that. That was, I believe, in the year 2000. And then I built another boat and got that as far as Nehalem, and built another boat. I left. I gave that boat to a friend, and the one that I built in Nehalem, I got it as far as Newport, Oregon, and I lost it in the surf in 2002. And then I decided that the waters were getting kind of rough, so I actually hiked all the way from Nehalem, or excuse me, Newport, and then I hiked down to Arcata, and then I hiked as far as Santa Rosa, where I built the boat that I've got now, in the middle of the freeway at Santa Rosa Creek, and took it down the creek to the ocean. And finally got it to here. It took me 4 years to get to Santa Cruz from Santa Rosa, which is a distance of about 200 miles.
So you built a new boat there from getting the lumber from the people there, from Santa Rosa? Or?
I didn't build it. I didn't put any lumber in that boat. I built the entire boat out of any... I was very careful to not incorporate anything into the structure of the boat that had ever been basically murdered in the woods.
So what? Oh, that's what you did. So what exactly is that? You mean, what did you not use? You didn't use anything that grew in the woods. And what did you use?
Excuse me.
Let me ask the straight way.
Well, anything that, like a logging company, especially when I was in Arcata, I got really familiar with this. A logging company will come into an area and start hanging up orange flags. Mm-hmm. And then they come in one day and start up their chainsaws and just take paradise, basically, and destroy it. They leave a big field of stumps. Um, so any wood that went through this particular process is you can build things with it, but anything that's totally unsinkable, like the Indian boats, the ones that Indian, not Hindu type, but American, Native American Indian tribes up in Washington and Oregon, they carve boats, and they're basically unsinkable. They're maybe 2, 3, 4 inches thick, and they're solid wood, and they just carve out a big groove down the middle of it, and then make it more or less streamlined around the outside, and there's no way to sink them at all. You can turn them upside down, you can fill them up with water, but you can't sink them. And the trees that they make these out of are all windfalls or things that washed down the river and landed there or something like that. But they as far as I know, they never make them. There would be no reason to make them because there aren't that many of them. But they make them out of windfalls, or they things that have died, fallen by a natural method, not come in and murdered by a bunch of insane. If you'll excuse the no, I can't. I won't say insane. God is everywhere, and he permits it, so it can't be totally insane. But on the other hand, I consider logging to be just a pretty self-defeating occupation.
Yeah, you said that right. I mean, you said that. I think that not the way you wanted to say it originally. So, so you don't use any kind of lumber then?
Not in the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my guitar, I got no idea where they got that wood, and I use that all the time. And anything else, that's made out of wood, I use a lot of implements and so forth. But as far as the thing that's eventually would end up on the bottom of the ocean if you ever sank it, that's not, that is not going to be anything that was ever cut down in that fashion.
So where's your boat right now?
Parked over at the harbor.
All right.
Yeah, it's all fiberglass and PVC and foam and every kind of thing. It basically an unsinkable boat.
And how do you make sure it stays there, besides tying it?
Oh, I'm paying rent there.
Oh, cool. So you pay, not a slip. You mean to tie it off? All right.
Yeah, they're giving me a special deal because usually they haul them out of the water in the winter, but they just let me park it at the dock.
Oh. Well, one time you wanted to make sure it was there, and you sat on the beach and watched for a while. What happened?
Oh,
or a few times.
Well, it's a long story. Santa Cruz is not most of the power. The people that are in power in Santa Cruz did not arrive here by kayak. At the very least, they came by covered wagon across the mountains, and most of them probably drove in on a paved road with their own automobile and just a whole bunch of money. And this is how they got to Santa Cruz, and this is their whole outlook, is that everybody gets here by the road, and there's no thought at all of anyone that would come into Santa Cruz by the water. So the place is hostile to this type of approach, not deliberately, but if you come cruising into Santa Cruz in a kayak from San Francisco Bay, and the first thing that you're going to find out is you can't land on the beach. They won't let you land on a beach. If you park at the harbor, they'll let you go for a while, but eventually they'll come up and say, hey, we want $20 a night to park at the dock. So that takes care of two possibilities. You can park the boat off the beach, which is what I eventually did, but then you have a problem with people coming around and vandalizing it, and there's not much you can do because it's 100 yards out in the water. So, it's just a matter of what they need is a visitor's dock, like they've got in San Francisco Bay at a couple of different spots where you can pull in, park your dinghy or your kayak or something like that for a couple of days, and then there's to be able to stay on the land for 72 hours after you've been for a long time, like weeks or months out in the water, is it's not just a blessing, it's a necessity. You have to be able to operate off of the land. Man is not a fish. He can't live out in the water. He can stay out there for a while, but if he wants to acquire anything to eat, he's got to have both feet on the ground. You can go out there, you can, like, they go out and they catch fish, and they say, well, we could live out there in the water forever and just eat fish. But this isn't actually the case. In order to acquire everything, most of your time has to be on the ground. This is not a guess. This is an absolute necessity. If you don't have your boat basically parked on the beach, there's really no way that you can supply it. I found this to be true. I mean, I've had my boat, for a long time, out in the water, and it's not acquiring it. Like when I was in San Francisco Bay, for instance, I could land it. I'd be able to get this and that, and
Are you ready?
be able to supply it and get water for it and so forth like that. You can't do that unless you can get the boat in a very, very secure position.
No, would you like to be? Hi.
You're on the
Hi,
phone.
you got to hold a minute. I took a call, and the person would like to be in the air. Just a second. Okay, go ahead.
My question is, I assume you're an American citizen, and you've traveled along the coast. Isn't there a constitutional right, freedom to travel? Is there a basis in court to allow people like you to freely travel based on a constitutional right?
Well, yeah, you can travel. Anybody can in America. I mean, there's no law against traveling. And in Canada, when I was there, they kind of messed you up a little bit because they make it difficult to get your mail sent to a different post office, which kind of interferes a little bit with your freedom to travel. But there's no problem like that in America.
Oh, there isn't? Okay, because when you mentioned when you seek to dock in Santa Cruz, you can't go on the beach, and then they charge you $20 to go to the public dock.
Yep.
Isn't that impeding upon your freedom to travel?
I'm sure it is.
Okay, that's my only question. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, caller.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was interesting. So what has? Where else have you tried to dock, Robert? You told me Santa. Not.
Well, I came
you couldn't
down.
have gone there.
I came down from Valdez. My first. I'll enumerate them. I spent the winter in Cordova. I spent the winter in Yakutat. Spent the winter in Sitka. Spent the winter in Ketchikan, and then I hit Canada. Well, Canada is like in the first place, it's if you've got any kind of marijuana, anything on your record, like a lot of people do from way back when they were young and didn't know good from evil. They might have some marijuana busts. Well, if you do, you can't ever get into Canada. They won't even let you in. So the whole time it was a 600-mile trip. Normally, I would travel 250 miles in a year's time, stop, and at that point, I would be as familiar with the area enough so that I could survive the winter, because it wasn't that much different from 250 miles back. But 600 miles is a considerably greater distance, and traveling that far in 1 year kind of threw me off a little bit. It was almost like an environmental Well, I couldn't adapt. I couldn't understand. There were things about the area that I eventually got to, and it took me like 2 or 3 months, I guess, to travel all the way from Ketchikan to Bellingham, Washington. And there were things about the area when I arrived that I couldn't adapt to as well as I could have if I had stayed in Canada. So I think that it would be a lot easier to survive if you didn't have to travel that far. But what was your question again?
Yeah, you answered it. You told us where you have been and what kind of travails you made, and you started out from 20 years ago from
Valdez. That's how far I've come without using petroleum.
My God. So what kind of stories about petroleum you want to talk about? You told me one.
Petroleum. Oh,
no.
Okay, here's Alaska. You know, I got there in 1974. They were building a pipeline, but they hadn't actually done any pumping out yet. It was, well, all I can say about it at that point was it was the wildest party that I have ever seen. I mean, there were when it was just, you know, it was constant, you know, music and people generally, God forbid, mostly drunk on beer, wine, hard liquor. It was an alcoholic's paradise, is what it actually was. And then they opened the pipeline in 1977, and the police moved in. Before then, you know, you never even hardly saw the police. You know, they were, you know, a factor which only came out when they were called, and, you know, it was an actual necessity. Suddenly they started interfering with people having fun. And at that point, you know, the place, you know, just automatically started to quiet down. And by the time I left in 1989, you could hardly even raise your voice in the place, you know, without, you know, having a cop come down on you. I mean, it was, you know, it was that patrolled. So you know, I'm personally of the opinion that petroleum is fine in the ground, and but as far as, you know, the problem arises when you start burning it, and I'm not sure if it's because of the actual fact that you're burning this stuff up that's causing it to be more a negative situation, or whether it's the fact that there's suddenly a very, very hot fire. I strongly suspect it has a lot to do with the very, very hot fire part. I mean, you know, all of a sudden, you know, if a million people start burning gasoline, there's going to be enough heat coming out of their exhaust pipes to basically warm up the atmosphere. Somebody said, described it to me as you take your bathtub and stir it up a little bit, and then just affect the water with your normal household blowtorch, I believe was the term that he used, and see what happens to it. You know, I mean, basically, you know, that's what's happened to the Earth. This global warming thing is just nothing but a great big huge fire.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're on fire, I know. A lot of other shows about that. We could talk about that more, but what's on your mind these days? Anything happened to you with Santa Cruz as far as, like, being able to live here and do what you want, or has there been any problem? You know, have you gotten any camping tickets, for example?
Oh, I've been okay. I tried to pull my boat up into the river one day, and I got a ticket for having my boat up in San Lorenzo River. I thought that the ranger was a little bit incorrect. He gave me 24 hours to pull the boat out, otherwise he was going to impound it. But he didn't check to see what the surf was like. And I darn near lost the boat at the mouth of the river trying to get it out. So next time, I do hope Ranger Wallace, before he tells you got to take your boat straight out of the river, that he checks to see the size of the surf. I think that was a little bit abrupt of him. I'm not going to say that he did it on purpose. He probably has never actually paddled in a kayak, so he wouldn't know the difference, between big surf or little surf. But that is a factor. You could kill somebody that way.
Well, that's very important to hear. He just wouldn't want to be known as a killer of innocent people. I'm sure. You're listening to Free Radio, freakradio.org, Tangerine Dream Team, first hour. I'm here with Robert Facer, and we're talking about experiences he's had coming in on a kayak living here in Santa Cruz the last 2 years, is it?
Pretty near, 21 months.
And he's a person that lives outside, and he's had to deal with a lot of people not liking that fact. I mean, somewhat. Or other things that come up. What's happening as far as the court with you?
Okay, well, I have a camp. I got a couple of camping tickets. We're trying to. I'm basically, or me and actually, there's a large number of people that don't like the camping ordinance that exists in Santa Cruz County. Today I placed this particular proposal, which I'll read to you right now, before the city council. Upon purchasing, this is the proposal that I was making to try to undo the camping ordinances. It just says you can't. Basically, it says if you ain't paying rent to somebody, then get out of Santa Cruz. Is what the law actually is in its entirety. This is what the law says. And the only reason that this has never been challenged in the court is because the people that it victimizes are generally too poor to do anything about it. I'm concerned, well, not concerned, but I'm absolutely positive that eventually they're going to try to inflict this law upon somebody with a little bit of money, and they're going to end up owing them quite a bit because the law is obviously unconstitutional. Here is the proposal that I am making to the city council at this point. Upon purchasing a permit for a reasonable amount from the Department of Fish and Game, and I thought, $5 would be a reasonable amount, but I'm sure that the city council would have its own opinion there. Persons are allowed to set up a camp, which includes a flexible, movable dwelling for a period of 7 days in one location. At the end of 7 days, the entire camp must be moved as near as possible to 100 yards or more. The site vacated must be free of litter. More than 3 pieces of visible trash of more than 1 ounce would constitute a violation. At the end of 7 days, the permit must also be renewed at no cost if the party wishes to remain, and failure to renew the permit at the end of 7 days would mean that the permit would be revoked and could not be acquired again for a period of 6 months. Persons setting up a visible camp without a permit, one which includes a roof, would be guilty of a violation. I think basically the problem in Santa Cruz is people that come to this city and they stay a little while, and then but hitchhiking is so much fun. They're new at it. They probably just got out of the relative bondage of school and parentage and so forth, and so here they sit in Santa Cruz, and then they decide to hitchhike 1,000 miles, so they go way far away, and then they come back to Santa Cruz again, and with no thought at all to the fact that the intervening distance might have cost them anything, because they've never really done that much traveling. So I think that making them giving them this incentive to stay, and also to stay away for a long enough period of time, so that they're not putting too much of a strain on the system, would be I think it would help Santa Cruz. This is my
that was what you
suggestion.
read in the 2-minute oral communication part.
Yes.
Or was it on a... No, it wasn't on an agenda item.
Yeah,
No.
I read it. I wasn't on the agenda. I passed out copies of this to the entire city council, and I also read it in 2 minutes. But actually, today they weren't so many people on the oral communications, so they gave us all 3 minutes.
Well, I got to just hand it to them. They have a lot of time to give.
Yeah.
I mean, they guess that was another whole minute. Okay. And so how many people do you think were there?
Oh, I don't know. Gosh, there was probably 20 or 30 people in the audience, or maybe somewhere around there. Probably not more than 20, I think. People come and go. You know, they make their proposal, or they make their statement, or they get their whatever it is passed, or so forth, and then they take off out the door. So
at least you got to be on community TV also. Well, you know, when they get everybody that's up at the microphone.
Oh,
you're on.
Well, I'm not supposed to give my permission to have my picture taken, so I.
Oh dear.
I didn't. I pretend to ignore that.
Now, why is that? You want to talk about that?
Well, the Bible says you're not supposed to make any type of graven image. My religion, which is Amish, we say if someone asks you if they can take your picture, just tell them, well, my religion doesn't allow me to have my picture taken. But if they, if they're contentious or so forth, you don't fight it. You just let them go ahead and take their picture. But if they do ask you, you say, well, no, I'm not supposed to give my permission to have my picture taken.
Uh-huh. And so you accidentally went out over the video waves there.
Oh, that's okay, I guess. I mean, I imagine it makes a great deal of difference. If you're talking on TV, if there's a lot of people watching, they're probably you're being judged. I mean, they can look at you and they can say, well, okay, this guy's a swindler, or this guy, he's honest, or this guy knows something, or this guy is stupid. When you get on TV, I think the important factor is that you've got to be correct, mathematically correct.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you're not preaching anything that would cause those who were following you in some way to make a mistake. In other words, like if I went on TV for money, or if I went on TV for any reason other than the fact that, it just happens that I'm trying to talk to the city council and they just happen to be filming everybody that's talking to the city council. If there was any other reason for that, then I would be in a way leading people astray, because here I am telling them that it's okay to be on TV, which we don't believe it is.
Yeah. Well, the city council always tapes people. They always they always bring community television down there. And I guess you could ask that they turn it off while you're, maybe just have a sound on. I don't know. They've done that other times. They say turn off the camera when they don't want certain things shown.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you walk into the drugstore, you're on TV. It's as far as I'm concerned, the fact that it's being broadcast to a lot of people, I don't know that. You tell me that's true, and I imagine that it's probably true, but I still don't know that.
Right. Like now, how many people out there are listening? So how do we get people to call in and let us know? Well, also you can be online and we can tell how many people are streaming this show. I don't know how to tell, but there is a way to tell how many people are listening via the internet. So you're tuned in to 101.1 FM, and you could also be streaming at freakradio.org, 101.1 FM Santa Cruz, the Tangerine Dream Team Hour. I'm almost wrapping it up with Robert, and I'd like him, if he'd like to, because of the next guest coming on, if he'd like to stay and maybe talk to him. Our next guest will be Paul Lee, who has an acquaintance with Robert here. And so I would invite you to stay if you want to see how that conversation goes next hour.
I'll do that.
Now, as for this last, what I'm interested in was the ordinance about singing or noise and unreasonable noise that's been in the forefront for 4 performers out on the Pacific Avenue, which happened to be one of them was yourself. You got in the middle of something that happened on January 6th.
Oh, all 4 of us. We were doing nothing. Somebody just didn't like us. The last time I was on your show, I believe a week or 2 ago, I said, well, somehow we stepped into somebody's personal feud. We were doing. I've played drums. I have played guitar. I've played considerably louder and for a considerably longer time, and nobody has ever said a darn thing to me. And all we were doing there was playing very softly and playing music that was it wasn't anything really that we weren't. It was a political statement that we were making. It wasn't. We weren't playing in order to create a musical atmosphere. We were basically making a political statement, and they came along and hit us with this unreasonable noise clause, which is basically unconstitutional for a couple of reasons. In the first place, it says that Congress shall make no law respecting the citizens' right to freely assemble. If a musician is playing on the street, there can be no other thing that will happen. I mean, basically, a musician is the seed of an assembly. If he's sitting there and if he's any good, then there is an assembly. Everybody, people are going to go by, they're going to stop and listen. Okay, so there's an assembly. And so affecting a musician's right to play is affecting the law which says that affecting the citizens' right to freely assemble. So you've got a constitutional case here. The fact that it hasn't ever been